Retro Groove. Enjoy your voyage.
Howdy and welcome to Retro Groove. I'm Adam C.
And I'm Liam D.
And this is a podcast where we talk about music that stands the test of time, the albums and artists that have shaped and reshaped the sonic landscape, as well as covering new music from those artists. Today, I am under the weather, recovering, but been with some kind of upper respiratory garbage for the last week or so. I'm just finally starting to get over it, so Liam, you're going to have to take the brunt of this episode, my man.
I got you. I feel that, you sound great. You've got that, I don't know if you watched Friends, but you've got that, Phoebe Buffay when she gets sick and gets her sexy voice, and she's like, oh, gosh. She's, licking sick people to try and stay sick. So, sound pretty good. But are you taking care of yourself? What's your medication plan here?
Well, I'm just kind of staying inside, and I've got my tea that I get set up, taking the Mucinex and stuff like that. But I got my special tea concoction, particularly for trying to get recorded here. All right. Lemon and honey in the tea as usual. But my little life hack is I drop a Ricola into the tea as it's steeping. So it dissolves and you get the menthol in there with the tea. So it's all in one delicious sippable package.
I've got to try that. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, well, hopefully you don't have to, but it's nice when you need it. But yeah, I'm starting to get better. I want to get outside and enjoy the wonderful fall that we're having here finally in Texas. Summer in Texas is about 9.5 months long, so brutal. We're finally getting some cooler weather and some breeze and some leaves falling off the trees and good stuff like that. Nice. So I'd like to get over this so I can get outside without exacerbating my symptoms.
Yeah.
So what's going on with you?
Not much, hoping that work kind of quiets down. It's been a little wacky, but I've been able to grab a couple awesome releases. Nice. Something happened in the past couple weeks, and I think it's going to carry through to early next year, if not through all of next year, where there's a lot of this bottled up music that's been recorded during the pandemic or was supposed to come out.
Yeah,
that's been coming out. I just feel like there's so much good stuff. We were talking in the Discord about Snail Mail. I snagged, I don't know if you're a Courtney Barnett fan, but her new album is so good. She's
cool.
got this kind of chill, talky kind of way of singing.
Right.
It's got I keep thinking of Joey Ramone when she does it, because it's such a unique singing voice and singing approach. But this album, she had some pretty garage rocky stuff in the past. This album feels a lot more personal. It's kind of bright. There's a lot of uplifting points in this. It's a gorgeous album. So definitely consider grabbing that. I pulled it on CD because I knew it was something that I just kind of want to cruise around in my car. As I've talked about before, CDs are for the car, vinyl's for the home. Another CD that I grabbed that I wish I could have gotten on vinyl was the Manchester Orchestra Christmas songs. They just put it out, and I looked all over the place because I almost exclusively get Christmas music on vinyl. I just don't listen to a lot of it in my car. And so I love just putting on a record around the holidays and letting it play. I've got plenty of them, but I may double dip on this one if I can find the vinyl, because it sounds really good, and obviously I've talked at length about that band. So
yeah, I'll have to check that out for sure.
You had talked about the war on drugs last episode, I think, a little bit. And,
I was listening to them.
Yeah, I pulled the trigger on the vinyl on that because that's one where I know I dig the whole album. I've given it a couple listens now, but I know I'm going to go back for more. Look, it sounds like the war on drugs. Like it's not any grand departure, but I also don't think it necessarily needs to be.
No, it doesn't.
They're just so consistent. And then I picked up a greatest hits album, which I rarely do, but this one, my daughter likes a bunch of songs by The Weeknd.
Oh yeah,
and I was like, it'd be good for me to just like have kicking around in the car. There are a few songs of his that I wasn't super familiar with that I'm like, I'm not playing this for my 6-year-old daughter, but like. It's probably good that I educated myself a little bit more on his catalog because there was a part of me that initially went into this thinking like, man, it'd be cool like in a year or two to maybe take her to a weekend show. And if he's going to perform The Hills and some other songs. And I'm like, yeah, she can't be in the audience.
She can't be there.
She can't be there for this. So I'm going to have to find something else to take her to. And we can wait a few years on that. Yeah. And then I wanted to, and I asked at the record store, and they didn't have any record or planned release for it at the moment, is the new Silk Sonic album, or the Silk Sonic album. I've been listening to that a ton, just streaming it, and I would love to have that on vinyl because it's such an easy thing to like kick it on. It's just a cool throwback funk record, like old school Motown vibes. It feels so good.
Awesome.
And we've known about this project for a while, but like it's definitely one that I'm hoping gets like a proper vinyl release because it's something I want to physically
perfect
own.
for vinyl. So it hasn't come out on vinyl or anything?
No, I think it looks like there's going to be a way to buy it online, but I'd like to try and get it through my local.
Yeah.
Like I want to see if they can order it or something like
that.
And
that may also come down to some of the production
that
issues that we're going to talk about in a little bit.
Exactly, yeah. And then I went to a couple shows. Nice. Was out at Wolf Alice at Bowery Ballroom. Like that space, obviously, iconic small venue in New York City. And I, for some reason, and I feel like this is going to keep happening, in my head, it was so much bigger. Like when I got in there and like went upstairs and looked down, I was like, this is a tiny room. But admittedly, like I had that at MSG like a week or two ago where I was sitting there and I was looking around and I was like, this isn't as big as I thought it was, like this is like an arena, but it feels a little tighter than I thought. Great band though. I was only familiar with a couple songs, but she is so cool. The whole band just has a great vibe. So Wolf Alice, definitely want to check out. And then I got to see Alicia Keys.
What?
I saw her in person. She played the Apollo also in New York. And that's talk about an iconic space, but like she played the hits, had like Jada Kiss and Styles P and a bunch of other like icons come out and perform with her, and she had dancers. It was just so well orchestrated, and it was cool to be in a space that was like curated by an artist like that, right? Like you felt like she had a vision for what she wanted us to see and experience. And it was great to kind of just be whisked into that and have like dancers coming down the aisle next to you and stuff. Like it was very, very cool. That
sounds amazing. Yeah. That's really cool.
So had a good musical week or two.
Awesome.
Here.
Yeah, I've got speaking of seeing live music, I'm got my booster scheduled for tomorrow. So
nice.
After that I'll be like, all right, it's time to swap some air with the crowd of people and not feel too terribly concerned about it. But as far as speaking of going into public places, but before I started to not feel great, I popped into one of my favorite locals, Piranha Records, and I just felt like digging. I had time to kill, so going through the whole the whole row alphabetically. Picked up Abacab by Genesis, which is my first Genesis vinyl record that I've picked up. Been meaning to kind of dig into their, as a prog rock fan, been wanting to dig into that. So excited to learn more there and get some Phil Collins rhythms in my in my space.
Nice. It's a weird album, but I think I like it a lot. It's a great album.
Well, I love weird, and speaking of weird, I also picked up Drama by Yes. One of their weird ones. They've got a lot of weird ones, but I'm into it. I'm a Yes fan, so I was happy to grab that one as well. And then adding or ticking another box on the McCartney collection, I picked up Wings at the Speed of Sound. So I got those 3 records. I only paid $20 for all 3 of them, so I was happy about that.
Not bad.
And in acceptable condition. If I'm buying used like that, I don't particularly care if it's in perfect condition as long as it's playable and it's not completely destroyed. I did also end up ordering a copy of the new Idols albums, IDLES, and I think I shared it in the Discord. But man, this album, talk about raw frickin' rock and roll music. This album has really blown me away with just the raw power and emotion that can come through in a frickin' rock album. I think they kind of get considered post-punk. You can definitely hear the punk influence in a lot of what they do. But he's got kind of a Jim Morrison growl going on.
All right.
Yeah, so I don't know if you've gotten a chance to listen to it, but
no, not yet. I'm not familiar with them.
Oh man, it's so good. And I've listened to it enough times in the car this past week that it just came out last Friday. And I've listened to it enough that I want this in my collection. So I ordered the vinyl.
Nice.
I wanted to order, they have what's called an Eco Mix pressing on their Bandcamp, which is an interesting concept. It's not something I've heard of before, but what the Eco Mix is at the pressing plant, they take all of the scrap vinyl from all the other pressings, various colors and whatnot. So usually what you get is a really unique and one-off coloration. And it might be something totally random and that looks like no, because they're literally, instead of throwing it away, they're pressing it using the scrap vinyl from other pressings that didn't get
used.
And
that doesn't affect the sound or anything like that? Yeah.
I don't know. I wouldn't necessarily think so any more than any, purposefully multicolored pressing.
Well, yeah, that's what we were talking about last week is when you do a blend as opposed to it being a segmented thing, you can have some issues with the segments as opposed to it all being kind of blended together. But I've never heard of that before. That is really cool. And also I can see an opportunity to, with the right record for it to be a crazy collectible issue, that one of a kind deal is can make people go nuts. Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. But then what I noticed is that, them being a band from the UK, the shipping was going to be $14. So I was man, that would have been great. But the 25 for the record plus 14, I was no, I'll just pick it up locally. And I got it for $22. So cool. I had to get it for half the price. Yeah. I was all right, let me just get the black vinyl. Yeah, you've had a splurge recently, right? And I'm dying to hear your takes on your splurge. Well, yeah. So obviously I actually not finally, it was pretty quick considering it was coming all the way from Germany. I was expecting to wait multiple weeks, but it was only about just under a week to get my copy of Kid A Amnesia, however you want to pronounce it.
kind of cut up the words there. From Radiohead, I ordered the red vinyl pressing from Germany because I couldn't find it available to pre-order anywhere locally.
Right.
So I got it in the mail.
It's the real thing.
60. It was a real deal. I did get concerned for a little bit because, I was watching the shipping. It came FedEx, so I was watching the tracking information. And more than one time, it didn't seem to know where it was, and it said that there was a delay. And one of them said operational delay, and I was like, what the heck does that mean? So
don't drop this.
Yeah, I don't. So, but then at some point, a couple days later of it saying operational delay, it showed that it landed in, I can't remember now, somewhere in the Midwest, whatever the FedEx hub is for the international. And I was like, oh, okay, so it's in the States.
It felt better.
So, and then a couple days later, it was on my doorstep. So.
Yeah, I had that with my Halloween costume. I had bought it like a month before Halloween. I bought it for a month before Halloween. I got a Squid Game jumpsuit, but I ordered it from like Korea or something, and it never showed up. It never showed up. So like I canceled it. I didn't have a costume. I canceled it like November 3rd or 4th. They gave me the option to cancel it. I bought it through Amazon, but like through another vendor through Amazon. So I knew it was risky. But like I definitely like multiple times a day would punch in the random tracking number, and it would be like parcel picked up at location, but like then nothing else, and who knows where this thing is. So I feel that like refreshing, like, okay, where are you right now? Where are you right now?
Multiple times a day.
So it made it to you.
It did. But watch, you'll get your costume in like February.
Yeah. Well, I got my refund, so that's fine.
Okay, good. But yeah, the pressing sounds really, really good.
Nice.
As a lot of people have reported, there's a little bit of distortion on How to Disappear Completely in some of the louder parts. For some reason, I'm only noticing, I listened to all 3 discs front to back, both albums and the bonus disc. Just that one song has a little bit of distortion on the high end.
Weird.
And it's, who knows? I don't know enough about the manufacturing process. Some people are saying it's non-fill, which basically means that the vinyl didn't quite get into the mold enough, so it's not a full, complete groove, and so you're missing some of the. I don't know, but it's not. It doesn't kill it for me. You know what I mean?
Sure.
If anything, it's like, because it's at like the loudest portions of the song when you've got the swells of the orchestration and Tom's voice at its highest peak. And it's like, so it almost kind of adds to the overwhelming nature of that part of the song.
Yeah.
It really honestly doesn't kill it for me. It's not a deal breaker.
It's like the vinyl can't even handle it at that point. Like your record player can't even handle it.
But the rest of it sounds really good. Amnesiac in particular sounds phenomenal. I've never heard Amnesiac sound this good. And the bonus disc is cool. It's not, I wouldn't consider it like a standalone third album or anything, but if you're a fan of Kid A and Amnesiac, it's definitely got some cool like alternate versions of songs. Obviously, there's a couple of unreleased songs that they fully fleshed out, and those are fantastic. So it's good. It's a good addition, but it's not something that really stands alone. It's definitely a good companion to the other 2 albums, though. So I'm really happy with it. So one of my favorite, now one of the kind of gems of my collection. So I'm happy to have that. Other than that, I've been listening to that. I've been listening to Idols, and then here and there. Oh, like we talked about on the Discord, I have been listening to Snail Mail, enjoying
She's
that
awesome.
quite a bit. One of my friends was like, "Is that Deep Sea Diver? It sounds like Jessica Dobson from Deep Sea Diver." And so they kind of have a little similar timbre to their voice. So I don't know if that's why I kind of initially latched onto it, because I love Deep Sea Diver, but I've been really enjoying Snail Mail. And then yesterday I was just in some kind of mood. I was driving around, going to some thrift stores, trying to find some stuff for my new apartment that I'm moving into in a couple weeks. And I was like, I need some Tears for Fears.
Yes.
I love Tears for Fears, but it's like
amazing.
Tears for Fears for me, I have to listen to that whole Songs from the Big Chair album all the way through. And it's like an emotional roller coaster for me. So it's a commitment, but I was doing, a couple hours of driving around to various places. So I threw that on, and it's always such a trip. I love that. I love that band.
Yeah, I think they're touring in 2022. So that could be a show that you go to and have a moment.
But that was it for me.
Cool. So I know we wanted to talk a little bit about the vinyl production stuff, which we've touched on in the past, but there was a bunch of articles and stuff that came out, and some artists were tweeting on Twitter, which is a rough place to be sometimes, about how there was this news article about Adele's rollout for her album, right? Which is going to be ostensibly the biggest album of 2021. Like, he's going to steamroll over almost anything that was released this past year.
Yeah.
And that's fine. So they are going to be pressing 500,000
I saw that.
copies of her album.
It's a lot.
It's a lot, especially when production times for some of these things have been upwards of a year. So that you have a lot of artists. If you are excited about an album, you're going to the store, you're not seeing the vinyl record copies of this stuff until 6 months, 8 months after release. Or there's people who are holding off on putting music out. I think the War on Drugs might have been one of these, where they just kind of delayed it, so they could plan a tour around it properly, but also to have the vinyl release because it's an important thing. And that is one of the things with the Adele album, is they wanted to make sure it was day and date because they want to make money. They want to be able to capitalize on this. One could make the argument that an artist of Adele's stature, if you had the vinyl come out 6 months later, you'd have a ton of people who streamed and or bought the CDs at Target and then went and got the vinyl 6 months later, and you could double dip. But I think that they see the opportunity as greater up front. Right. I get it. Yeah, I totally get it. But
that's
the argument
where
was
buzz is at its peak, and people have such short attention spans these days, so definitely want to capitalize on that new release excitement for sure.
So the buzz on this though was did they cause delays, or is it compounding delays by expediting this? And it looks like it's not. It looks like they've been planning this for a while. This album's been done. I think the very unique thing that was interesting to me on this is, so usually they'll cut a certain number of lacquer sets to put out and use for the kind of the production to base every vinyl record off of these kind of master lacquer sets. Right. And each plant will get one or two just to account for any sort of breakage or whatever that could happen to those sets. But having multiple lacquer sets sent out to other distributors is rare, and there's a lot of them for the Adele one. I think it's 20 sets of mastered lacquers, and each of them, I mean, it's a double LP, so it's a double set of the lacquer sets. Right. So it looks like they just sent lacquer sets out to every single production plant in existence, basically. Yeah. So every production plant is having a hand in delivering part of that 500,000. So I think that's where this news piece kind of bubbled up from. It just stinks that as everybody's getting excited for new Adele music and it's such a moment, that you then wind up having these stories that dampen it a little bit, especially in my opinion, at least wrongfully so.
I mean, it's an easy target. They gotta get the music out there. Yeah, exactly. It's going to be the biggest album of the year in music in general. So it's the easiest target. It's a huge number of albums to press. But of course, that album is not solely responsible. It's all cumulative. We had massive delays. I pre-ordered an album back in June that initially was only, supposed to take a few months. It's not even supposed to come out until next month now. And that was last I've heard of it, directly from the artist a couple months ago. So these delays are not necessarily anything new. Of course, we had that really unfortunate accident with the plant burning down.
Yeah.
Was that last year that happened, or the year before?
I think
don't
so.
Even
I mean,
now.
I think it's last year. I think it was early 2020.
And I just recently found out that it wasn't a pressing plant that was pressing the vinyl records. It was the plant creating the acetate for other facilities to press the records. One of only 2 or 3 facilities in the entire world. And I believe this was the biggest, if not the second biggest. So, this is a multifaceted issue. We've got the exploding popularity of the vinyl format in general, outselling CDs for the first time in like a lifetime. So that compounded with the global supply chain issues that we have anyway, and then one of the biggest manufacturing plants burning to the ground, and then not, at least as far as I know, I don't know if there's any plans to try to rebuild it or relocate or whatever, but this is a multifaceted issue, and Adele is certainly not to blame. But of course, being the biggest music artist in the world, so to speak, it just I think makes her an easy target. That's all it is.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there must be a case study or some data to back up part of this, because I think Taylor's version of Red that just came out day and date with the vinyl version, but the one before that did not. Oh. And so I'm wondering if there's some sort of inside industry knowledge, like they look at the numbers, because Taylor Swift, arguably up there with Adele as some of the biggest stuff and biggest music that's out there.
Worldwide,
Billie Eilish's new album was also day and date on vinyl. So I'm wondering if there's some data there to say that sales are boosted by having it day and date. The interesting thing here is that then you have artists that need to take into consideration this waiting time. So like Olivia Rodrigo put out her stuff and didn't have it available on vinyl, but they just wanted to get the music out there and capitalize on the moment. Whereas Adele, they put in these lacquer sets 6 or 7 months ago. So that meant that she had to be done with this, and then they had to keep this album secret,
right?
And like plan all of this stuff. I 6 months is a long time to have a project sitting there on the burner like that. That's not the normal kind of queue of things. Like obviously we saw with Kanye this past year, like he delivered it the day before it got released, basically. So it's interesting to see how each artist kind of decides to take control over how much production and accessibility impacts their rollout, their release schedules. And like you said, I think we're only going to see that happen more and more.
It's going to get worse before it gets better.
Yeah. Do you know anything about the Taylor Swift? Because I saw a post on it. I haven't looked into it yet, so maybe both of us don't know. But what was this thing about Taylor's vinyl having to be played at 45?
Oh, well, okay. So this was kind of circulating in a lot of the vinyl groups, which of course, as with any enthusiast group, has a certain amount of gatekeeping, which is unfortunate, but it's going to happen. What ended up happening was Target got a special release of her album that was a double album pressed in 45 RPM. And it arguably, there's a better sound quality out of it. The same way that back in the day when you had tape, whether it be an audio cassette tape or a videotape, the faster the tape is running, the better quality you have, right? So, even this new Idols album, they have a 2LP 45 RPM version because some people prefer that. I actually tend to prefer the 33 RPM because I don't want to have to get up and change the record and flip it over every 3 songs. I would rather listen to half the album and then flip it over. But and a lot of people feel that way, but Anyway, Target ended up getting a special release of the album, which was, 2 LPs, 2 discs, mastered as such and pressed at 45 RPM. So theoretically allowing for some better sound quality. Taylor Swift, her audience is obviously going to be a little bit younger. And a lot of these music fans are new to the format. And I was digging for records the other day, and there was a 12-year-old kid in the same aisle as me. And I was like, cool, good. I didn't say anything, but I was like, dang, good for you. Thumbs up. Cool. There were a lot of negative reviews on the Target website.
Wow. Claiming
that, I don't know what's wrong with this record or what this is, but there's a man singing this record.
Yeah, I saw a creepy voice. Yeah.
There's a creepy man voice singing Taylor's songs. This is not what I ordered. And of course, all the old fogies like me are laughing at it because, not necessarily in a mean-spirited way, but just like, oh, you sweet summer child, you know what I mean? Because that's happened to all of us. We'll put on a record and be like, oh, wait, that doesn't sound right. Oh, I've got the speed on the wrong setting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But someone new to the format doesn't necessarily know that there are multiple speeds that it can spin at.
Yeah, it's also happened to all of us in the other direction where, like, we don't know how to make something in Minecraft or whatever, and somebody's like, oh, you boomer.
Exactly.
you old man. And I'm like, come on. God.
Always.
So it is funny. It is funny to have it go in the other direction. That's so interesting. I hope that this does inspire a bunch of people to, like, if you bought a turntable to listen to Taylor's records on vinyl and you're looking for other cool stuff, there's a lot of, like you said, you just picked up 3 great records for $20. Like, it's a good time to go out there and start discovering some vinyl records.
Yeah, and this kid was flipping through old records. They weren't in the new pop section or anything. They were looking through like classic stuff that I was looking for. So that gave me hope for the future. Whereas the folks leaving negative reviews on the Taylor Swift album killed it. So it works in both directions. Go ahead.
We touched on last week. It was in advance of Astroworld happening.
Oh my goodness.
And I was looking at, the announcement rollout and the plans, and I was like, wow, this could be really cool. This is an exciting lineup and rollout here. And then little did we know what was about to unfold there. Tragically,
so tragic.
Awful. And I still can't wrap my head around. I feel like we're going to have a lot of conversations about this in the future as a culture, trying to figure out exactly what happened. The weird thing is that it seems very similar to something that happened in 1979. Everyone's kind of hearkening back to this concert. I think it was in Cincinnati with The Who, where same kind of thing, like people are so jammed in and crowded that they're lifted off of the ground and are just compressed to the extent that they can't breathe. Their body can't get oxygen. And then I think there's like 10 or 11 people dead at this point. So a few people died after the fact. It's horrific.
So sad.
And
just, my God.
It's scary. It's scary and you and I as dads too, like festival crowds are usually fairly young.
Yes.
And I've kind of, I think around Lollapalooza waxed a little bit about how I was looking around and I'm like, man, I'm not ready for my daughter to be one of these people. And now I have another reason to be worried,
No.
Yeah.
Well, thankfully my daughter hates crowds of people. So she doesn't like she'll like if we pull up somewhere and there's a lot of people, she'll be like, no, can we come back later?
I'm staying in the car.
So, but yeah, I had those same thoughts like, oh man, my kid's going to want to go to a concert someday. And, so hopefully the industry, you would think that we would know by now, but of course it's going to come down to the individual organizers. And, I'm not going to sit here and point fingers, but, it did bring up a lot of, issues in the past, specifically with Travis Scott kind of inciting some unruly behavior. And, so how much blame can you place on the artist versus how much blame can you place on the organizers for not setting up the venue appropriately and not having trained medical staff. There were reports that the medical staff that they had available were not properly trained. So it just unfortunately looks like this was a perfect storm of multiple issues coming to a head and causing such terrible, it could have been even worse, but any loss of life is tragic, and it's just, really, really unfortunate because it was avoidable.
Yeah, there's something about, rock, live music, whatever it is, the punk nature of it that says, break down the walls and don't listen to the rules and stuff. And there's a time and place, and there's a balance for that sort of thing. One of the weird things that I've heard, and again, I think that this is a situation where there's going to be a lot of speculation, so I'm not going on the record on this, but it sounds like a lot of this occurred because people jumped or broke down a fence and got into a controlled VIP section that was not built for a lot. Like they had a certain number of people that they were planning on having in this VIP section, and that was compromised unexpectedly. And that may have been where this occurred. Again, I don't know if that's actually the case. That's just the latest that I've heard on that. And if that's the case, you hope that a festival organizer has taken into consideration all the protocols to prevent people from storming the gates of a festival and have the security. But this maybe they didn't have that sorted out, or they just didn't. It was a blind spot and they didn't see that. And I don't know who's to blame. But I was initially of the mindset that maybe Travis was taking on too much of the brunt of it. I wasn't fully aware, still might not be fully aware of how much he was inciting it, but I've heard that he was kind of posting and talking about how people should just, get into this festival, that however they can, they should try to get into this festival. And that's, it's game over at that point. Like the moment that you are on record inciting people, your liability is
not a good look at the very least.
Yeah.
And so
the
investigation is ongoing, and we'll be, watching that, of course. And, hits a little bit closer to home for me with it happening in Texas. So been paying attention to that.
Let's talk about let's get positive here.
Sure.
Let's be a little uplifting. So one thing I didn't mention that I was listening to in my first thing, but I do want to flag, is the new ABBA album. I don't know if you've listened to it at all.
I haven't.
It's fantastic. So ABBA has a special place in my heart just because, the songs are iconic. I grew up, my mom played it a bunch, and then it was such an easy catalog to throw on with a young kid. So in the car at 2 or 3 years old, Mamma Mia and Dancing Queen were just so fun things to have on. I would suggest throwing this on. I was shopping for groceries this weekend and had my headphones on and was just grooving to this album while, it's such a good album in this holiday season. There's a lot of uplifting moments. There's a random Christmas song, within this album. And then right after it, there's this awesome, I got to put it on this week's playlist. There's this awesome song about, a divorce and, it's called Keep an Eye on Dan, where the woman is dropping off their son to be with their father on the weekend, and it is such a good song, and it's such a banger. But it's within this uplifting album. What this feels like, so the album doesn't feel cohesive, is I guess what I'm saying. This is first album and last album in 40 years.
Oh my God.
This is it, and I think it's just the scraps and pieces of what they've kind of been throwing around in the years since.
Which is fine.
This is a group that has turned down millions of dollars to reunite over the years, and are doing it on their terms, which is cool. And the other thing that I want to point out is that they are going to have a live show, and I'm blanking on where it is. It seems like it's a Vegas thing, but it could be touring. It won't be them. It's going to be avatars, which I feel like someone came up with the term avatars, and we're like, well, we got to do something with this. Like, avatars is too good. I
Oh
just
my
killed
God.
Adam.
That's
But
hilarious.
like, they have done mocap on all 4 members,
Wow.
and created these avatars of the band, and
So
the
they're doing
avatars
like
are going to
a
go out
Gorillaz
there.
thing.
Exactly, and I'm like, man, are there other artists that I would, because like the Monkees just did their farewell tour and 2 of them are dead, and like I think I'd go see a Monkees Avatar show. I would definitely see a Michael Jackson Avatar show.
Oh, jeez.
So there are some that I'd be like, yeah, maybe I might go see an Avatar show if it comes to my town. Like, that sounds kind of cool, and it seems scalable. It's just like digital characters, right? So definitely suggest checking that one out. And then, so I think Dan was the one that posted this in the Discord. Muppet Christmas Carol vinyl release.
Yes.
So, do you have a sweet spot for this movie?
Oh, heck yeah. So it's one of the, I don't own a lot of DVDs of it being at 2021, but the majority of the DVDs that I do own are Christmas movies, of course. You know,
Right.
Home Alone, Elf, Charlie Brown Christmas. But Muppet Christmas Carol is one of them. Absolute childhood favorite.
Yeah.
The Muppets hold a special place in my heart, and a lot of people, but me and Dan love particularly that era of Muppets, particularly Muppet Treasure Island and this one. But this was a surprise. I did not anticipate this. So I literally have a calendar event on my phone.
Me too. For Black Friday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Gonna get it. I'm excited.
So then 2 questions for you. Did you own it on VHS back in the day? Is that how you watched it originally?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you know the song? Okay. Do you know the song "When Love Is Gone" that the woman sings to Scrooge?
Yes.
If you know that song, then you had the VHS version, because in the theatrical version and in the DVD cut, never made it.
The DVD version that I have has both.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
My DVD version still doesn't have it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, now I can't remember if it's in the deleted scenes or if it's in, because when you pop it in, you can choose the theatrical version or like the other version. I may be remembering wrong, but it is on there, whether it's in a particular version of the film or if it's in the deleted scenes. It's there, and I've seen it. But I do feel like I knew the song before I got the DVD. So
then you had it on VHS for sure.
We had it either recorded off of TV on VHS or the official VHS, one or the other.
Well, for years it was gone.
Yep.
So this song was not, they couldn't find it. Like, it got put back into the most recent thing. I think it's going up on Disney Plus or something soon. But
sweet.
For ages, I mean, when they did the theatrical release on this, the head of the studio was like, it's too emotional, it slows the whole thing down, this is a kid's movie, kill it. And it's been gone for forever. And so the moment I saw this link, I like zoomed in on the back of the vinyl, and not only is the original version on there, but they also have the version that happens that gets played in the credits that Martina McBride performs. So both of them are on this. I definitely remember also the weird thing about this song is it's a theme that gets revisited. It's so important at the end when they sing The Love We Found. And it just seems, if you watched this movie and didn't know that song, then that ending piece
what are you referencing?
Is missing half the heart. Like, it doesn't hit you as much. So I am so excited that both versions of this song are on this pressing. There's 2 different colors. I can't tell by the pictures if there's 2 different album arts or if it's like an insert, but I'm gonna have to get both of them. I don't know. Like, it's gonna be amazing. I'm so excited for this to be on my turntable. Hopefully this Christmas. Hopefully it gets here in time.
Yeah, absolutely. I would have pre-ordered it and put the money down now if it was available. But looks like we're gonna have to wait. I'm definitely gonna grab that I'm actually wondering if I should grab a couple copies and then, just if anybody tried and didn't, I don't know if there's going to be super high demand for it and it's going to sell out instantly, or if it's like there's all this hype for it and they still have hundreds of copies left over. You know what I mean?
I'm gonna grab 2 for sure, one of each, and try to send one to my sister because she and I had such a bond over this movie.
That's cool.
And then I'll probably revisit it once I determine which one I'm sending her. If I go back a day or 2 later and it's still available, I might just add another one to my cart. We'll see.
Might as well.
And then what was this Foo Fighters thing that you mentioned?
So I put it up in the Discord, and I think they announced it a little bit further back, closer to Halloween. But the Foo Fighters are releasing a horror movie called Studio 666, and it's going to come out in February. And I'm not actually sure what to expect from this, but
that seems so random. I mean, it's cool. Like Foo Fighters are always doing something unexpected. They do something different. They change it up.
I'm assuming that it's going to be something like real tongue in cheek, like they do with a lot of their, or at least did with a lot of their music videos, like the Learn to Fly video, where they're dressed up as different characters and stuff like that. They just like to have fun. The Mentos
I'm hoping for some cool cameos.
For Big Me on their first album, that always comes to mind. So I'm guessing it's going to be real silly and campy on purpose.
Yeah.
But that's just my guess, and I'm excited to see it anyway. It'll be fun one way or the other, whether it's meant to be taken seriously or whether it's meant to be silly. I'm probably gonna enjoy it either way. But that's fun that they're doing that.
The potential for some fun cameo moments. There was the guy from Chips, I'm blanking on his name, who was in all of their promo videos for one of their albums and stuff. There's been so many moments throughout their career that I could see Joan Jett just randomly showing up at a moment in this movie. It could be really cool depending on what it is. Either way, it's gonna be fun.
Cool cameos, of course. Yeah. That'll be great.
Want to hit a little history here before we flip it over?
Yeah, some quick history items and some birthdays because I know we're a little bit pressed for time. I'm also kind of using this as an excuse to bring up Britney Spears because the news just came out that she finally was released from her conservatorship. Congratulations to Britney. I was jumping up and down. Not that I'm even a huge fan of her music, of course, but what a terrible thing to have gone through. So I was really happy to hear that news. But September 17th, 18 years ago in 2003, at 21 years old, she became the youngest singer to get a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Crazy.
So congratulations to Britney Spears on her freedom. And I hope that she sues the pants off of those responsible for her imprisonment. Yeah. And then on November 18th, 1976, Richard Hell and the Voidoids made their debut at CBGB's in New York. Richard Hell was an innovator of punk music and fashion, one of the first to spike his hair and wear torn and cut up T-shirts and, that punk style. Spearheaded that, and which obviously has been copied, and you still see people perpetuating this style to this very day.
And CBGB's that's also an early point when CBGB's becomes that place in New York culture. It is country, bluegrass, and blues is what it stands for. It is, when you look at it, you're like, that's the punk mecca. But Richard Hell kind of kicked it off there, yeah.
Yep, and then the manager of the Sex Pistols has actually been quoted as crediting Richard Hell as a source of inspiration for their look and attitude of the Sex Pistols. So makes a lot of sense, when you go back through your history. The only other this day, November 18th, 1993, as some of us who are old enough to remember, Nirvana recorded their MTV Unplugged special at Sony Studios in New York. Of course, album ended up going on to win a Grammy for Best Alternative Music Album. In 96, actually, was the year they won the Grammy, but obviously has gone on to become an iconic album, and despite being a live album, is kind of considered part of their,
discography, like proper discography. Yeah.
A lot of cool. I was always impressed by the fact, and this was just, Kurt Cobain being Kurt Cobain, but, they didn't play. It's like half the songs aren't even Nirvana originals. He plays songs by the Vaselines, David Bowie, Meat Puppets. They have that Lead Belly cover at the end. And so I thought that was really cool as a fan. Even at the time, I was like, what are these songs? And that was actually one of the things that got me into David Bowie and discovering his music. Was hearing The Man Who Sold the World, watching that on TV. So that's... that was a long time ago, 1993.
And Nirvana just officially released, I think the physical just came out of the Nevermind 30th anniversary, the whole box set or whatever. So if you're a fan, check that out.
It's funny, I'm not actually as big of a fan of that album. I'll still to this day listen to In Utero, like in the car and things like that. But so I'm a fan of theirs, but not necessarily a super fan.
That one.
And then a few quick birthdays. November 15th, 1968, Russell Tyrone Jones, better known as Old Dirty Bastard, ODB.
Yeah, the only man with more nicknames than Puff Daddy.
Exactly. ODB, Dirt McGirt, Dirt Dog, Big Baby Jesus,
Big
Osiris.
Baby Jesus, man.
As probably more nicknames than he has albums that have come out. So
Snoop might be up there too. He was
Snoop
Snoop Lion and Doggy Dizzle. He's got a bunch. Yeah, so that maybe he and ODB are probably like tied.
That'll be an interesting. That would be fun to go down the. That would be hard to quantify though, because are you officially taking on that moniker under an album, or is it just like? You know what I mean? So, but that would be fun.
Are you the dog father? Yeah,
exactly.
What is that? Yeah.
We'll have to go down that rabbit hole at some point and see who has the most nicknames. But also on November 15th, 1974, Chad Kroeger of Nickelback. November 16th, 1964, Diana Krall, Canadian jazz singer and songwriter. I think she and Robert Plant have an album they put out relatively recently.
It's Alison Krauss.
Alison Krauss. Diana Krall, Alison Krauss. Dang it. I always get them confused.
Yeah.
I always get them confused. That's like the sixth time I've done that in the past few years. Dang it. Okay, anyway, moving on. November 17th, 1966, American singer and songwriter and guitarist Jeff Buckley. His 1995 album Grace being his only studio album released. He tragically drowned on May 29th, 1997 in the Mississippi River doing a spontaneous night swim. And, had a bunch
of... Maybe on drugs, yeah.
Who knows? Maybe.
Maybe on something, who knows, yeah.
He's got a lot of posthumous releases and stuff that came out, but he just had
one album. Like really one album.
Yeah, and it was big.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's a great album. And then, November 17th, 1980. And this one threw me for a loop because I can't believe that he's older than me. American musician Isaac Hansen, guitarist, keyboardist, and vocalist with Hanson, who had the 1997 number one single Mbop, as I'm sure everybody knows, like it or not. Hanson has sold over 16 million records worldwide.
Don't sleep on him.
8 top 40 albums. I'll repeat that. 8 top 40 albums.
Yeah, they're an American institution.
Top 40 singles in the U.S. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like them or not, you can't deny their widespread appeal. And
hyper talented. They broke so many, specifically young women, but so many people of probably our childhood era into this like rock pop style of music that there are so many people that I know now who are big music fans who got their start and still love Hanson to this day. They're like the Jonas Brothers. I think they recreated that about 10 years later. But Hanson, Hanson became the moniker for cheese pop of that era as well. And that's fair. There was a lot of that, but have put out a lot of great albums since. And they're just ridiculously talented. It's don't sleep on them.
And even at the time, back in the 90s, when I was very anti-pop, I at least acknowledged, like, hey, you know what? They're at least playing their own instruments and, writing their own songs and things like that. So even at that, even at that age, I could acknowledge, like, all right, so objectively they're talented, even if the song makes me want to stick an ice pick in my ear. So
and let me grow my hair out too. That was the other thing. Like all the other pop bands that were blowing up at the time all had those like short, crispy, cup of noodles or frosted tips, and I like Hanson. It was just like long. I had longish hair, and it was like, these guys have long hair and the ladies love them. I'm just going to
let my luscious locks honestly flow. Thought that they were a female group at first.
Sure, right. I mean, honestly, high-pitched, yeah. No,
we didn't have high-definition TV back then, so it was...
That's right, yeah.
It was hard to tell sometimes.
Those CRTs, yeah.
And then last but not least, November 18th, 1962, Kirk Hammett.
Badass.
Lead guitarist of Metallica, and needs no further introduction. I'm not even a Metallica fan, but I can, look to him and some of the stylistic choices that he makes as some inspiration for me as a guitar player. So happy birthday to Kirk Hammett. And that's about it.
So we're going to flip it over to side B, where we are going to celebrate the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for all its pros and cons.
Yeah.
So let's head on over there and talk about some legends and icons.
Let's do it. Back on side B of this episode of Retro Groove, and with my voice being the way that it is and reaching the end of the limits that I've got right now, Liam, why don't you take us through some of the history of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and some of the recent inductees?
Yeah, sure. So part of the reason why we're bringing this up is in just a day or so from recording this, so on November 20th, you'll be able to watch the 2021 induction ceremony, which was recorded at the end of October. It's pretty exciting. Again, we've been talking about getting back to live music, and this is one of those institutions that, love it or hate it, is a really special moment in recorded music and pop culture. Every year they do a great job of orchestrating this stuff, and last year's they tried their best, and I think they were fairly successful in pulling off what they did. But to have this be what it was, it's such a great return to form for them, I think, this year. And there's been a few leaked cell phone videos, as there normally is, and some trailers and some talk and some articles about what happened. And from all of that, as you piece together the mosaic of what happened at this ceremony, I think we're in for something really, really special.
Nice.
So just as a quick run through of this year's induction, and then we can go over some history here. But Tina Turner, who we've talked about on a previous, I think maybe even last episode, she was inducted this year by Angela Bassett. She was not present. She accepted via video, but taking up her mantle and her representing her on stage was Christina Aguilera, Mickey Guyton.
Oh, nice.
Her and Keith Urban all kind of contributed and celebrated her on stage. Again, we at the time of this recording, we don't know what that sounded like. I've seen a little bit of a YouTube video of Christina's performance, and even the bootleg is banging. So that's going to be really cool.
Is this the first time that they're like releasing the full ceremony
No, I think you've been able to see it before. I mean, I've only ever really watched highlights, but I think you've been able to watch it before on TV. It has had its moments throughout the years where you only see certain parts and whatnot. But I think that it's been a couple times when you've been able to see this the full thing. So Carole King, known for her Joanne fabric jams,
the fabric store music. I love
was inducted by Taylor Swift. Taylor performed at this, and so did Jennifer Hudson. So that's going to be really cool. The Go-Go's were inducted. They performed themselves. Inducted by Drew Barrymore. Jay-Z inducted by Dave Chappelle. Jay-Z did not perform, right. And I don't think that there was a Jay-Z performance component either. So that's another weird thing that happens at these is you can kind of see as they're sculpting together and you have different personalities and who will do what and who's comfortable with their music being represented in a certain way. Right. We have bands that break up and then who's actually getting in. It gets really messy. And so we often don't know what happened behind the scenes on a lot of these things. So I don't know why there was no Jay-Z medley, or maybe there is and nothing's come out about it yet. But
I can see him being the kind of person that didn't want to attend and didn't want anybody else performing his music.
Yeah. So he attended. I think he attended. Okay. I think he didn't want to perform. And I think that he also didn't want to have anybody else perform his music. That's wholly me speculating. Right. But like, it has been noted, I believe, that there was no proper Jay-Z performance component of any sort at this show, as opposed to the Foo Fighters and LL Cool J, who both showed up and apparently brought the place down. So nice. Paul McCartney inducted the Foo Fighters into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is so cool. Cool. And I believe he joins them on stage. There's another bootleg where Dave is talking about Paul and they perform, and I think Paul's on stage for it. Sometimes it's hard to tell at these things, so I'm excited to see what the deal is there. I would be honestly shocked
if that didn't happen, considering they've performed together before, or at least recorded together before.
Yeah, and then LL Cool J was inducted by Dr. Dre, but performed with Eminem and J-Lo.
Wow.
And Eminem has been on record for years as like number one LL Cool J fan, influenced by him heavily. The attitude, the demeanor, the flow. So it is very cool, especially because you really don't see Eminem perform a whole lot. He doesn't really come out of his house and do stuff too often. It's pretty sporadic. And LL Cool J, you know, he's more of an actor these days. He's all over the place. Right. He's a brand and a businessman, and then sometimes he puts out some records. So it will be cool to see those icons, especially with Jennifer Lopez on stage. That's a part of it that I'm like, if anything, I'm watching that because it's going to be so cool.
Oh, definitely. I can see myself watching the whole thing, but
yeah,
that for sure, that highlight.
So Kraftwerk, which they were nominated a few times and finally got in, inducted by Pharrell. Gil Scott-Heron, Common was there and paid tribute to his legacy. And then Todd Rundgren, who has had a contentious relationship and has been outspoken against the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame a bit over the years, was inducted this year by Patti Smith. I believe Patti was there, Todd was not. So he, and the excuse, and this comes up a lot over the history, is like, you already had a date. Like, I think that some of these artists schedule conflicts so they can be like, I have a paid gig in the UK or in Minnesota or whatever it is. So he had a conflict and couldn't attend, but so did Tom York back in the day, for what it's worth. I don't know. And then a few others that were inducted: Billy Preston, Randy Rhoads, Clarence Avant, and Charlie Patton. So definitely look to check that out. Like I said, it's available on HBO starting November 20th, and I'm sure it's going to be a killer show. Yeah. So Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is, it can be a dicey point. I admittedly am not super familiar with other Hall of Fames baseball or whatnot. No. I'm assuming that most are established by an organization within their subsequent industry. This one is no different. It was created by some record label execs, and so immediately you have that feeling of like a little incestuous.
That's been a contentious relationship between the artist and the record execs for a long time.
Yeah, and then like who are the decision makers? Like, are you like who are the god makers that get to kind of pick? One of the nice things that the Rock Hall does is when you get inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, you get to be a voting member then. So it is structured in a way that is supposed to check itself. Like if you're in the Rock Hall of Fame, then you get to have your fingerprints on what the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame looks like going forward.
Yeah,
so
that's cool.
there are some cool provisions there, but there are some limitations and some people who have been nominated a few times that haven't gotten in that probably should be in there. I think Judas Priest is pretty pissed about that right now. But so created and sort of formulated in 83. The first inductees were in 86. And the first 2 years, when you look at it, 86 and 87, the focus is mainly on going back and rightfully so, looking at what created rock up until the late 80s. And so you had Elvis Presley and Buddy Holly and Jerry Lee Lewis and Chuck Berry, like all of these icons getting in at that time. But what that means is then until like 88, 89 is when you start to see like the Beatles get in, like they focused mainly on those like rock and blues stalwarts, and like spent those first few years catching up with the past 30 to 40 years of what rock and roll was to get to there.
Which was the right way to go about it.
Yeah, for sure. So the Beatles, an interesting one. I mean, those guys, they were inducted in 88, and then each individual artist has been inducted over the years. So now all four Beatles are also in there. But so one thing, and we touched on this a little bit during the 2021 inductions, is these amazing performance moments that they put on at these shows. I mean, that is, it's who's inducting you, and then what kind of performance, how are you being represented on the stage? And so I wanted to walk through, just in my personal opinion, because I'm sure some of these people would feel differently. Some of my favorite performances over the year from induction ceremonies. And the first one, I honestly don't think anyone would ever argue against this. I think that everyone has the same number one, and it's so cool who it is and how it came together. It's a sad note for how it came together, but it is from the 2004 ceremony. George Harrison inducted posthumously and represented by Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne of the Wilburys on stage with Steve Winwood, his son Danny Harrison, and then Prince's performance, like the emotions that churn through your stomach watching Tom Petty and stand next to George Harrison's son singing this song, like written and made famous by his friend, gorgeous song, While My Guitar Gently Weeps, and then Prince just comes out and,
oh my God,
like he sends him to heaven. It's crazy. There's a moment. Yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say real quick, as a guitar player, that guitar solo that Prince does in this performance is literally my favorite guitar solo of all time.
It's probably the best one ever. It's
incredible.
It's incredible. And there's a moment, and like from behind the scenes, you're looking at it and you're like, this was orchestrated a little bit, right? But there's a moment when Prince is at the front of the stage. He turns to Tom Petty and Danny Harrison while he's playing, and he loses himself and leans back off of the stage while he's playing, and someone's there to catch him and like pushes him back up on the stage, and you can see Danny Harrison loving it. He's just like, oh my God, he's so overwhelmed. Yeah, he's so overwhelmed by this expression for his dad and his music that like he can't control himself, and he falls off the stage but is able to keep performing. it is gorgeous. So there's no argument there whatsoever.
And it also should be noted that Prince, as much of a performer as he is, and as much as he is a show stealer, right? He does not at any point like overshadow or disrespect the 100%. Song or the other artists, despite him just being fully Prince in all of his princitude.
Maintains a balance. No, there's a balance on that stage of respect. You're totally right.
It's perfect. It may actually be like my personal number one watched YouTube video.
Yeah, it's incredible. I in preparation for this, I went back to this. I watched it 5 times. It's so good. And then you just think of what those producers were going through as they were putting it together.
Oh my God.
And then the feeling you must have had being in the room at that moment. They don't show the crowd. Everyone had to be crying. I'm almost crying just watching it on my laptop.
It's amazing.
Just gorgeous. Another one for me, and again, this is a personal thing, is The Cure. Just like that band, I love them so much. They were eligible for years. Like they were eligible starting in 2004. And there's a weird jockeying that happens with voting, where I know that a lot of people who vote for it vote a lot of the times for the underdogs because they look at the top line and they're like, they're getting in no matter what. So I don't have to worry about them. Let me give my vote to some of the underdogs that need it. And what happens is then you get these weird artists that are in between that aren't like the marquee showstoppers, like the Foo Fighters are going to get in on their first ballot, but they're also not those like underdog, unknown, unsung heroes. And so The Cure fell into this category, I believe, for a while. I mean, 15 years potentially, where like between nominations and votes, they just never had it. And then in 2019, they finally get in. Robert Smith is one of the sweetest people in rock and roll. He's wonderful. And then just if you haven't seen it, it's a show-stopping performance. It's just
I haven't.
The guy is in his 60s and doesn't sound like it. He still has it in spades and kills it. It's like they just play, I think, a 4 or 5 song medley of their hits, and it's fantastic. The production's great, the performance is great. His presence on the stage, he's obviously excited, and this is one of those moments too when there's been a lot of band members, and they're not all performing, but during the induction speech, they're all there. Everybody's getting in. The current iteration of The Cure and past members are all there, which is a really cool thing to see because sometimes that doesn't really work out so great. A contentious one that a lot of people don't like, but I do, is when the Doors got inducted in 93, they obviously didn't have a lead singer. Right. And so Eddie Vedder, who, at the time, Pearl Jam, massive. That was 2 years, it was 2 years after their launch, and Eddie Vedder was an icon at that point already. And I think what is contentious about it is it's a different vibe from Jim Morrison. Eddie Vedder doesn't have that sex swagger. He's got like a broodingness to him instead.
The grunge
like
thing.
A grungy brooding thing, but he still delivers it. The vocals are great. The band, Robbie Krieger sounds fantastic. They deliver a great performance. I think it's one of those things where expectations were going to be all over the place anyway, and so nobody was ever going to be happy.
I mean, who else would it have been?
Yeah, exactly. No, it wouldn't have been anybody, or you could have alternated between different people. They do that kind of thing sometimes, where they'll have different folks. I think they've had that. Yeah, they've done that a couple times. But I think it's great. Definitely worth checking it out. I don't think that it should be Adam Lambert and they go on tour together, like in Queen, but like it was a great moment. And then there's 2 All-Star Jams that are really cool that I love. The 92 All-Star Jam was really neat just because you look at the array of people they had, where you had Little Richard and John Fogerty and Johnny Cash and Neil Young, with members of U2, and they're doing Soul Man and Shout and All on the Watchtower. I mean, it was 92. There are a lot of great All-Star Jams. 92 is probably the best one. You just have, Jimmy Page and Johnny Cash, like to see them all on stage enjoying their company with each other. It's a really cool moment to kind of tap back into. And then 2015, last Beatle to be inducted solo into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is Ringo Starr. This is one, I don't know, Adam, if you've seen this video before, but this is one you should definitely go watch because it is.
I haven't seen it.
It's pretty recent, right? 2015, and you have Patti Smith and Joe Walsh and Paul McCartney's there, and they're singing with a little help from my friends. So it's a song that McCartney and Lennon wrote, but Ringo sang it, so it's applicable. And the whole audience is singing along, and as they go through the song, Green Day walks out, and Beck shows up, and Stevie Wonder's there, and Miley Cyrus rolls out, and Tom Morello starts playing, and Dave Grohl comes out, and Zach Brown's there. And like these people start appearing and running out on stage, and I don't know how much it was orchestrated and how much of it was just this organic, like, hey, everybody's here because Green Day got inducted or whatever. Like, just go out there and do it. But it is such a cool moment to see, like, yeah, it's so cool to see like Leon Bridges and Joan Jett singing together, and like Miley Cyrus and Green Day. Yeah, it's very, very fun, and you just sit there and it sounds great, and you look and you're like, I know every face on this stage, and there's like 30 of them. It's insane. So whoever put that 2015 one together, bravo.
The only performance I would add to that list, unless you got another one.
No, that's it.
Really quickly, I absolutely love when Yes performed Roundabout with Geddy Lee on bass. Obviously, you know, Chris Squire had passed at that point. That performance is nuts and just shows their aptitude as musicians, you know, however many years later. And it's just an incredible performance, and it showcases, you know, John Anderson's voice, which doesn't seem to have aged a bit. So that's another one that I would highly recommend.
I've never seen that one. I have to check that out. I don't even...
I think I posted it in the Discord at some point. It would have been a while ago, though.
And then I just wanted to touch on a couple of weird moments, because as I mentioned, you've got a lot of weird personalities. When you're talking about quote-unquote rock and roll actually encompasses R&B and blues and everything else. It's very expansive, and you've just got what makes rock and what makes pop music so great is the spectrum of personality types and perspectives and opinions and sounds, and because of that, you have a lot of dissonance that comes up over the years, especially when you're talking about something that's institutionalized. So Van Morrison, who can be a crusty dude, first living musician to not attend his own induction. That's back in '93.
You started the trend.
Go right ahead. I mean, it was bound to happen. They were lucky. I was going to say living musician. They inducted. The first couple years were a lot of dead guys. Then Radiohead, and this was kind of foreshadowed. They had been asked over the years, like, because there's an impending thing. I think it's 25 years from your first proper release, then you are eligible.
Okay.
And so I think as they got closer in some interviews, which are few and far between for Radiohead anyway, had kind of been asked, and Tom and them have been like, yeah, I mean, we don't really pay much mind to that kind of stuff, and we don't really understand it, and we don't feel like it's our place or anything. So two band members did attend their induction. Ed and Phil showed up, and David Byrne did the induction.
Oh, wow.
But there wasn't, I don't think that there was even like a tribute performance. And obviously the band didn't perform for that, which is a bummer, because Radiohead, that's a pretty big one, you know?
Yeah.
Like that's a big deal. Pink Floyd, another massive band. Roger Waters refused to go because the other he's always been in a fight with David Gilmour and Nick Mason and the others. They'd been messy lawsuits, and so the other guys were there, but no Roger.
Yeah.
Dire Straits, man. Dire Straits. Whatever's going on with Mark Knopfler, I don't know. I feel like there's been stuff over the years with him. And so they were inducted in 2017. there's a weird thing with them though. You're a Dire Straits fan, right?
I'm a big Dire Straits fan, but yeah, Mark does some weird stuff.
So this is one of the weirdest things that happens at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, because they don't have somebody to induct them. And there's been rumors over the past few years, again, this is fairly recent, 2017, there's been rumors that that Keith Urban was supposed to do it, and then Robbie Robertson wanted to do it, and between like fights between Mark Knopfler and the Rock Hall, and then once the inductors were notified that Mark wouldn't be coming, they would drop out. Again, some have denied this. There's been speculation. There's no official word. But the band inducted themselves. You know, like they got up on stage and inducted themselves without a performance tribute, without some celebrity to kind of talk about them and celebrate them and
Weird.
Give that speech. It's a very odd moment. You can go and watch it. It's kind of bananas. Guns N' Roses was going to be a mess. Like that band. That band is an absolute train wreck of a band. Yeah. Axl waited till the day before to give notice that he wouldn't attend. The rest of the band showed up, including past members of the band. But he served legal notice within his notification that he wouldn't be attending, that the bands couldn't represent him or imply anything about how he feels about the induction status. So they couldn't get up on stage and be like, we know Axl would have loved to have been here. They couldn't, like, they were threatened with legal action by mentioning his name in the wrong way, basically. Just weird, man. So two more I've got.
Not out of character.
There's a million of them here, but the two more that I've got. Yeah. Blondie. So another situation where the original band and the new band are getting inducted. They're all there, and I'm blanking on who it is, but one of the original band members makes a comment during their acceptance speech that it would have been nice to have played together on the stage that night, but they're not allowed to or something. And so instead she performed, like Blondie performed with the new iteration of the band, and the older members were not on stage for that part, but there's obviously
members.
There's obviously a lot of contention with those early members who they wanted to take the stage and have this like kumbaya moment of like, because you've seen it before. You've seen it before with certain bands where the legacy members would come back and all get together to have this experience for this one time, and this makes it magical. And for whatever reason, whether it's Debbie's fault or whomever, wasn't able to happen for Blondie, and she got up there with Clem Burke and whomever else was in the band at the time and performed with the new iteration of Blondie. And same kind of thing with John Fogerty. Another weird dude, man. So, and he had a bunch of lawsuits with his former band members who had sold rights and stuff. So, the original band members were there and accepted the award with him, but he would not perform with them. So the contingency was that like he would perform, but not with the original band members. And so instead, Bruce Springsteen and Robbie Robertson joined him on stage, which is pretty cool. Yeah, like if you're not gonna like for an audience member or a fan, that's pretty sweet. Like, who knows what's going on behind the scenes there, but made for a good show. Yeah,
yeah. It's always sad when
everybody
situations like that, like particularly with bands that I love, like Pink Floyd. It's like, come on, guys, like, what are you doing?
Do it for the kids. Come on,
exactly.
Get together for the kids. So again, like it's an odd institution. It's not something that's on the top of everyone's minds. It's a moment that happens every year and then it fades away. But there is magic in this institution. You can go visit it in Cleveland and see a lot of cool stuff. Mm-hmm. It's one of the best things to do in Cleveland. Nothing against Cleveland. It's definitely, if you have HBO or just check out some YouTube videos, I'm sure they'll have highlights out there. Definitely worth everybody's time to kind of see a nice swath of hip hop and rock and R&B and folk all get the look this year. And it's worth everybody's time to give it a few minutes, because I'm sure there's something there that you're going to dig.
Yeah, I'm so glad that they do include hip hop artists because, I mean, there is sort of a kindred spirit there, I think, with those two genres, and I just think it makes a lot of sense, and it's
for sure
it's great that's all encompassing in that way.
Well, cool. Thanks for letting me wax about this for a while, and hopefully it gave your voice a rest.
Yeah, and I enjoyed it. I learned a lot. I am looking forward to the performance as well, or the broadcast. I think it's easy enough to get like a free 30-day HBO Now subscription
for sure,
for a
or
month.
just get your friends. Yeah, I have my friends. Yeah,
there you go. Do whatever you got to do. But yeah, I feel like now I will be paying closer attention to the who is up for induction, who's being nominated, and all that, and have a little bit of a better idea of the process and what we can expect. So thank you. Appreciate the research and taking the brunt of that side B here. It was real informative. But as we coming to the end here of side B, thank you so much for listening. And I promise that my voice will be back to normal by our next episode. We're part of the RetroLogic Network. Check out the website, retrologic.games, for social links, merchandise, community, and more. So for now, we're signing off, and we will see you next time.